What if I told you that speed does not actually exist? Most people, when they first heard about speed or when it was first defined for them, they had gotten a notion in their mind and they think speed is something that exists and they've been working with this thing most of their lives. And speed is more of a concept than an actual thing. So, what is speed about then? Let's throw some light into what speed is. I'm going to start with the definition. By definition, we know that speed is the rate at which distance is being covered per time. So, in other words, speed is just distance divided by time. I'm going to give you this illustration. Let's say somebody had covered a distance of 10 meters and they did all of these things in 10 seconds. What would you say? We'll say their speed, with the speed with which they have used to cover this distance, is 10 meters divided by 10 seconds. And that would be 1 meter per second. But let's break this motion into 1 meter each. Let's say, for instance, they covered the first 1 meter. In fact, let me break it into 5 meters each. Let's say they covered the first 5 meters. They covered it in, let's say, 8 seconds. And they covered the last 5 meters. They covered it in the last 2 seconds. So that implies that in the first 8 seconds, they covered 5 meters. So you can find the speed again. That will be 5 divided by 8. And if you do 5 divided by 8 on your calculator, I'm just going to press my own calculator right here to get what 5 divided by 8 is. So let's see what their speed is going to be at that point. So 5 divided by 8 is simply 0.625. So that implies that this person has moved with 0.625 meters per second. In the last 2 seconds, they still covered 5 meters and they moved in 2 seconds. So their speed would be 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5 meters per second. Now, here's the thing. In the first place, we had assumed that their speed is 1 meter per second. But we now realized that when we break this motion into 2 parts, there was a time that they had a speed of 0.625 meters per second. And then there was another time towards the end that they had a speed of 2.5 meters per second. Now, the thing is that we can continue to break this motion down into smaller distances. We can say, let's look at the 1 meter distance is covered, and let's see how much time. Do you know that this 1 meter, it could be that the first 1 meter that they covered, it could be that they covered that in 3 seconds. And the next 1 meter, they covered it in even less than 1 second, until they completed these 10 meters and everything was done in 10 seconds. Now, you begin to see where I'm going here. That 1 meter distance that we just chalked now, we could actually break it down into simpler distances. So the question is that, at what range of distance do we measure speed really? Because if we say speed is distance over time, now we've seen inconsistency in the way we are talking about the speed of this body now. Because if we consider it in the holistic sense of it, we are having 1 meter per second, 1 meter per second, and if we begin to break this thing down and look at the way they are moving, we are beginning to have different speed identity. And that is identity crisis already. So if you begin to break this thing down up to very small distances, which distance do we then use as the reference point for the calculation of speed? That is why in physics, we don't really consider the concept of speed as a real thing, as an actual thing. We mostly use what we call average speed. So it is going to be wrong for you to always think of speed as in speed when it comes to the real life. What we use mostly is the concept of average speed. And that average speed just sort of gives us a net sum of all the speed that you might have used to do your journey. A net average rather, not a net sum, because the average speed is simply the total distance covered with over the total time taken. That gives us average speed. So when do we now say that, oh, this is the speed of this person? Now you could loosely use that word, that is not use average speed, if the person is moving uniformly, that is, this person is covering the same distance at every time interval. Then you can say, oh, this is their speed throughout the journey. So you can use speed loosely like that. And also, there's a concept that we use calculus to really address, and that is the concept of instantaneous velocity at an instance of time. That is, we're considering a change in time that is so small, such that this change in time is almost equal to 0. Then in this place, whatever speed you measure, this one you cannot really measure it like that. You can only theoretically work it out. If you can model your motion with a graph, then you use calculus to do that modeling. So that is instantaneous speed or instantaneous velocity, whichever one you want to deal with. So that one is even much more difficult to measure. So the concept of speed, like I said, is more of a concept in real life than it is an actual thing. So speed, what do we use? The best language to use whenever you are addressing the way somebody is covering a distance in a given time, the best concept to use is the concept of average speed. And that's it on the podcast for today. I believe you learned something new about physics. I'll see you in the next one.